My guest today is Elmarie Hyman, founder of Learn Beyond the Book, a California-based homeschool resource center for students in pre-K through high school. Young people can attend Learn Beyond the Book's in-person classes in two locations in the Santa Clarita and San Fernando Valleys, and a third location opening this fall, or they can take advantage of live virtual classes. Students who attend are either homeschoolers who pay out of pocket or public charter school students who attend tuition free or nearly so through one of California's homeschool charter schools. Elmarie Hyman, welcome to the Liberated Podcast.
Thank you, Carrie. I'm so happy to be here. I'm
I'm
excited.
so I'm so happy to have you here. I'm actually also very happy I was able to see you twice in about a 1 week period recently, where we were at VelaCon, the national gathering of grantees and founders and partners within the Vela Education Fund Network, as well as at the AERO conference, the Alternative Education Resource Organization conference. So great to see you in both of those locations. And thrilled to talk with you more on the podcast today. And so you started Learn Beyond the Book over a decade ago, back in 2012. But you didn't start off to thinking of yourself as an education entrepreneur or even an educator. Maybe tell us a little bit about kind of your professional background and how you came upon deciding to devote much of your career to education.
Yeah, sure. Well, I grew up in South Africa originally, and so I moved here when I was 23. My school background was very traditional, very, I would almost say militaristic, and very, I feel like I was a very good parrot. I was very good at taking tests and, doing great, getting great grades, but not really understanding what I was learning and not really enjoying it at all. So I moved here. I met somebody who was homeschooling, and her kids seemed very happy with their school. And I was like, wow, you can actually have fun while you're doing school. That does not compute to me, but I am definitely doing that. And my kids were babies at the time. So I started investigating it and I kept researching until they were older. And then I ended up homeschooling all four of my children, and they're all grown and graduated at this point. But I was very I feel like I got an education in the process because I learned so much while homeschooling my kids, and fell in love with education really, and the actual importance of having an education that teaches critical thinking and that is creative and exciting to learn so that you want to keep learning and create the love of learning for the rest of your life. So I ended up having co-ops and classes in my house and all kinds of things and field trips and just a big community that I built up over the years of homeschooling. And then eventually out of it grew Learn Beyond the Book, which now serves like almost 500, well, around 500 every semester. It just varies a little up and down, um, all over the country, really. Because with the Zoom classes, we have students from other states even. So it's very exciting to me. It's not something I would have ever dreamed of doing. I do have an accounting degree that I got in South Africa, and that's come in handy. But if someone told me I would be an entrepreneur, I would have literally laughed at them. I was a very happy employee, very compliant, thanks to my, my upbringing, um, and not really thinking too much. And then eventually, I was like, wait a second, this is not. This is not life. You have to think, the critical thinking portion, I just spoke about that at the Aero conference, how important that is. And growing up in apartheid South Africa and not even realizing what I was growing up in. It was just crazy, like how much the wool was pulled over my eyes. And I take full responsibility for it, but still I'm like, you know what, I did not think. I know that I was just kind of living or just surviving every day, kind of. So it definitely is super important. So yeah, we incorporate that in our classes.
Yeah. So how did you go from kind of homeschool mom, maybe involved in some informal homeschool co-ops, to deciding to launch an LLC and really become an education entrepreneur? Because I think there's probably a lot of people listening and viewing who are homeschool parents or maybe involved in co-ops, but that leap to running a small business can seem challenging. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about your motivation and how you went about that.
Yeah, that is a very good question. They always say don't necessarily make a business out of something that you love because it's turning into a business at that point, and there's a whole business aspect to it that a lot of people don't enjoy. Okay, so basically, as I said, we were doing co-ops and classes at my house, and I needed to start earning some income from for our family, and people were already saying to me, "Oh, I wish we just could pay with our charter school funding," which we have in California, but when you're having classes at your house, you cannot use that. And so I was like, okay, well, I am driving all over the town for my own children from west to east, north to south, and in LA, everything's far away from each other. So we were driving all the time to get to things that they wanted to do. And I thought, how about if I had a center where I can have the teachers come to us, the kids can all gather together in one place, and people can pay with the charter school funding. And that's kind of how it started. A need for some income, and then seeing all the needs all together, kind of pulled it together there.
Yeah, Elmarie, could you describe a little bit for viewers and listeners who may not be as familiar with California, what the homeschool charter schools are like there? Sometimes it's referred to as public homeschooling, all kinds of different names, but
Yeah.
explain that process in California.
Yeah, the process. Okay, so the homeschool charter schools, we have a lot of them. And now that Learn Beyond the Book is a vendor for at least 15 of the, we're basically become vendors for anyone that we find out about because we want people to be able to use their funds. But basically, parents can join, or students, I guess, can join the charter schools while they're homeschooling. And then the charter school provides some funding every year. It's roughly right now around $3,000 a year that they will allocate to each child to be used for educational expenses at approved vendors. And then in exchange, sort of, the parents have to meet with them every month, roughly every 20 school days, and provide them with some samples of what they've been doing, check off attendance records, provide kind of like an idea of the lesson plans or their future views of what they're going to be doing. So if they take a class at Learn Me on the Book, we create a syllabus at the beginning of the semester so parents are aware of what we're planning to do. Now, it's always subject to change because we do take the students' input, but it's sort of a rough draft of like what we're planning to do so they could use that to give the information to the charter schools. And then in return, the charter schools will then pay for the classes up to the budgeted amount every year. So they kind of split the funding into 2 semesters, kind of cut it in half, and then the students able to take however many classes or buy curriculum or any educational things. There are some limitations at some of the charters, like some might not pay for horseback riding lessons since it's high risk, or maybe something that involves a trampoline, but it's pretty rare. Usually they pay for pretty much any educational expenses. And then the students also third grade and up are required to take the state testing at the end of the year. So that's something that is a benefit to some and not so great for others, depending on their philosophy. So yeah, we're very grateful that they exist here.
Yeah, and the trade-offs, for some families, they will trade off having access to that $3,000 per student per year in exchange for meeting with a certified teacher and doing regular testing. Other families don't want to do that and are operating as independent homeschooling, something that's relatively easy to do and widespread throughout California. So you have a blend of both independent homeschoolers and homeschool charter students at Learn Beyond the Book. Tell us again what your numbers are, specifically in the in-person programs that you're running in Southern California. And what percentage of those students might be charter school students versus independent homeschoolers?
Yeah, we actually have in person around 400 students every semester, and they come and go all day because our classes are kind of a la carte. So they might only come once a week for one class. Other kids come a lot all the time. And then about 80%, I would say, of them are charter school students, and the rest pay out of pocket. So every family is different, and it's hard to keep track because they are sometimes switching between charters even mid-year, or they might drop the charter because there's too many requirements or whatever. So eventually the parents are responsible to pay the tuition, but they can ask the charter school to pay some. Yeah, so but about 80%, I would say, and then there's about 400 total in the in-person. This is from last year. Now with the third location, I'm not sure how the numbers will change. We'll see. Hopefully, there's lots of friends that come and join us there.
Yes. Yeah. We'll talk about your expansion plans in just a minute. But tell us a little bit more about the structure of Learn Beyond the Book today. It is a secular program that, as you mentioned, provides a la carte classes kind of throughout the week, and families can pick and choose what programs they want to attend. They could attend every day if they wanted. But you said to me earlier that most families sort of pick and choose maybe a couple of days each week. And that also helps to keep the program affordable for families, especially those who may be using some of their charter funds. So tell us, what is a typical week like in terms of the classes offered and the structure of the program?
Oh, yes, sure. Yeah, so for the charter school students, some of the charter schools actually, well, they all have the requirement that you can't be in a private school and a public school at the same time. So they go through they let their parents know that you can't just come every day all day long to Learn Beyond the Book, because then you're treating it like a private school, which it isn't. And then, so there's that little trade-off with the charter schools as well. But there are a lot of families that use all their funding, or they use most of it with us, and they can drop the kid off in the morning and go and work, part-time potentially, and then come back and pick them up in the afternoon. So every location is a little different. The new one in Woodland Hills and the new home one in Santa Clarita are open from 9:30 to 2:30 in the afternoon. So they have a little bit of a shorter day. So every day has three classes back to back, and you can sign up for all three and then sort of make a day out of it. So you have some breaks in between. In between each class, there's a 10-minute break, and then you have another 40-minute lunch where the kids bring their lunch and they just eat and play and run around and have the best time. And then in our Northridge location, the day actually ends at 3:50, so they have a longer day. So there's four classes back to back there. Every class is an hour and 20 minutes, because we find that if it's just an hour, a lot of the time it's like feels a little bit rushed. So at least that way people can take their time finishing up everything. And because we also incorporate some self-directed learning with the students, we don't want them to feel rushed. So that is most of the days. So Northridge is Monday through Thursday. Santa Clarita New Hall is Monday through Friday, and the new location will be currently Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. So we're hoping to expand that to more days next semester, but we just, I don't want to start too fast, too big. Yeah, so that's the classes are so varied. We have all the core classes, so math, English, science, and history or social studies, and PE. Some of the charters require PE samples, so that could be a picture of them running around at a soccer practice or something. But those are the core subjects that the charter school have to cover. And so we make sure that we always have those for all the different levels. And the kids are kind of going into the class ability based. So they aren't just going to go to pre-algebra because they're a certain age or a certain grade. They're going to go if they're ready. So we have placement tests to make sure that they're actually in the right level. And same with English. And then science and history, often get combined with fun things like history through Minecraft, or something that combines science with art, maybe, or all kinds of combinations, to combine them with the enrichment classes, which the kids really enjoy, and kind of combine the two to make it even more interesting. And then we also have a ton of electives, what people call electives, I call them just as much core, like music and theater and art. But then also kind of unusual things like fashion design, photography. We've even had a juggling class one time. We have like Dungeons and Dragons creative writing, so it's like very we try to incorporate the core subjects with fun everyday things, or do things like storybook cooking, so they learn some life skills at the same time as they can learn or read some stories together and talk about the book, so they have some reading comprehension, but then they make a recipe and they learn how to cook. So yeah, it's very there's a lot of variety, and then students can pick and choose, uh, kind of make up the days as it fits their schedule. So some people like to do their core class stuff at home, and then they come to us in the afternoon. And so they work on it in the morning, come to us in the afternoon. Other people like to come every day for one class. Some people come once a week. So the part that I like about it is that it's so flexible, and the parents can, make their own schedule, fit it around their schedule. So it works really well that way. And same for the teachers, honestly, because they get to pick when they teach, what they teach. They are very independent, really, and are in charge of their curriculum. So it obviously we talk about it and discuss all the things that they are going to be covering, and they upload the syllabi. So I look through that, but it's definitely they have a lot of independence, and they love that because they're not confined.
Yeah, and it's all paid instructors.
Yes,
All of your teachers are paid.
correct. Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to talk a little bit about growth, Elmarie, because how did you go from kind of your early startup days with a small group of students to now 400 in-person students in Southern California and another 100 who are participating online over live Zoom classes? How did that happen?
I know. I sometimes blink like, wow, I blinked, and I didn't just blink. I worked very hard. But it's amazing like how it has grown. Basically, well, yeah, we started out with 2 rooms, like 2 or 3 teachers, just my friends, really the people who taught at the co-op. And then over time, more and more people would tell their friends. So not just in terms of students, but there were more teachers that were offering more interesting things. So I would, luckily, we were in a building where I could just ask there were tons of space. So I would ask, is there another room that's near our room so that we can rent or add? And we would just keep adding one club room at a time. In the end, we were up to like five, no, sorry. In the end, we were up to like 7 rooms, and some tutoring rooms right before COVID. And then eventually during COVID, we moved out of that specific space, and started renting from other businesses and churches. So the word of mouth, I would say, is the biggest way that we grew. I've tried ads, it's not really very successful. um, and I also worked really hard to always provide like amazing customer service, because I would always try to get back to people with email or text or whatever as fast as I can. And just it's really, I always call around about my fifth child, because it's kind of just part of me. Like I'm just so it's such a part of my life that I don't think of it as work necessarily. People, I mean, obviously that is how I earn a living, but I enjoy it so much that I don't feel like I'm working. And when people ask me questions about it, I'm like, yeah, I'm happy to tell you. So I honestly will say it's word of mouth, and also staying active in the community, providing opportunities for people who are not enrolled. Like we have meetups and field trips and social events that we put on, and we open it up to any homeschoolers. And sometimes we get new people coming in from that, or otherwise it also have some referrals from the charter schools because they've heard good things. So I mean, quality classes, quality instructors, that's kind of the way that it grows. And then the quality teachers know someone who wants to teach, so they say, hey, I have this friend, she's great at teaching, when do you want to talk to her? And then I end up meeting with them, deciding if that's a good fit, if we need anything that they can teach. So that all was happening even before COVID, but then of course we all had to switch to Zoom and pivot like immediately. We actually moved our spring break up a week, and we said, okay, we're going to take a week earlier spring break so we can get everything ready to go on Zoom. So, I mean, I am just absolutely amazed still when I think back on how our teachers were able to just switch over and provided amazing classes. Still, we had online, a portal that we still have, where we would provide the parents information about like supplies they might need or things to print out, and then the teachers would make it as hands-on as they could. And the great thing about it was that even people who had their own kids, sometimes teachers, very rarely though, but sometimes they do have their students or one of their students in the public school, and they commented to me about how smoothly it went. And they're like, oh my goodness, it's like ridiculous now, to, like how smoothly everything went and how fun it still was. And their kid was so happy that they still had something to go to every day, because they, people came for their classes just like they did. And we didn't really have a drop in attendance or anything when COVID happened. Now, after we could go back, people were very happy that we could be back in person, but it was a very good in between thing. So then we were like, well, we have all these amazing Zoom classes now, so we might as well continue with them. And currently, the newest offering that we have been doing is working with micro schools and hybrid schools to create custom classes for them. So say, for example, we have the fashion design teacher. She does her fashion through history classes, for example, and then she might have the class at a time that doesn't work for a micro school. Well, we could design a class that is similar for a group of kids who are in micro school or hybrid school. And they can then, currently we're doing this with Spanish during the summertime, they project the teacher on the wall and the kids are together in person. So it's still an in-person class, but the teacher is remote. And then they just have somebody around, an adult, to make sure there's order of some kind. And the kids can learn that subject from the teacher, even though they're remote. So we have so many expert teachers. I felt like, they're underutilized. We could totally help as a micro school who might just have one teacher, might not have a coding expert or, whatever else they need, high school classes especially. So I've been talking to a few people who are looking for help with like outside help to get somebody, but they don't live local. So yeah, so it's been amazing to watch, especially the community that's grown out of it. I love community, and that was definitely a goal of mine, to create something that has a lot of community activities and feel more like a family. And it has grown way past what I could have ever even imagined. It is so great. I mean, even we've had people when someone is sick or had a baby, sometimes they're like, "Oh, let's start a meal train," or, just like the great community things that you can do with and for each other. Often the kids say, the parents tell us in the morning, this other parent's going to pick up my kid because they're going to go have a play date after. And I'm like, yes, we made it. This is one of my goals, is for kids to have that social part that's sometimes harder if you're not automatically in the school every day. And because our classes run for 16 weeks, they end up really getting to know each other. And the teacher really gets to know them, so that they're able to just be able to tell if they're, absorbing everything that they're learning. So without a bunch of tests. So.
Yeah. And how did you make the decision to go from one location to a second location further away and now a third location? That seems to be a big leap. And I'm curious about what prompted you to do that, and what would your advice be to other founders who might be thinking about expanding from one location to more?
Yes. Oh, that is a good question too. Okay, so when I first started, as I said, it was mostly for my own children and, just to start earning some income. And I basically started locally because I could drive there really fast and then my kids could be there with me whenever I was there. Then over time, some parents were driving like 30 minutes to come to us, and they were like, "Oh, could you please start something in the San Fernando Valley?" And I thought about it until a parent said, "I'll help you." And I was like, "Okay, that's what I needed," because I would love to go there, but it's really not that convenient. And at the time, my kids were still in school and, in my program, but I still was homeschooling as well. So end up helping a parent ended up being like kind of sort of the on the ground, foot boots on the ground in Northridge. And so we started there. It started, as well, like kind of small and then slowly grew bigger. And then I have some teachers who live in a different area closer to Woodland Hills, where we're starting the third one. And they were like, "Yeah, we would love to teach more. It's a little too far for us to drive to Northridge every day, or, if we wanted to teach every day." And so I started thinking about it. And at the same time, the Northridge location has kind of exploded after COVID and is really, really full. So there's not any space to add any new teachers or anything like that. There's still some space for students in some classes, but it's really full. And I would like to have it stay small enough where everybody knows each other rather than just growing and growing and finding a bigger space. So I decided to start a third location in Woodland Hills then in the fall. So those teachers are teaching more frequently, and some of the Northridge teachers stepped up and like, "Yeah, we want to do it." And then I've also hired some new ones, again coming through the referrals from current teachers, which that's kind of the only way I hire teachers at this point, because I feel like your vibe attracts your tribe, as my daughter always says. And so if I already have amazing teachers that I feel are my friends, not just colleagues, we go get coffee or lunch or something always in the summertime or in between the year, then I feel like, okay, they will probably know really cool people as well. So so when they say, "I have this really awesome friend who teaches whatever," then I'm always much more likely to hire those people than I don't even go and look, honestly. That's just really the thing is our classes are uh very teacher led in a way that they are the ones who are deciding what they want to teach. So I don't if I don't have for one semester, I don't have a fashion design class, for example, nothing's going to happen. It's not like some predetermined curriculum has to be followed. So if I don't have that teacher that semester, they could even take a semester off and say, "I'm coming back, but I need to do this other thing." And then, like most likely there will not be another fashion design teacher, but then that semester we just won't have it. So I'm never forced to do a class. And I always say I would rather not have a class than have a class with a teacher that I don't completely trust, that I would want my own kid in to be in their class. So it's kind of nice that we don't have a particular thing we have to do. I always try to have all the core subjects for sure. But there's so many teachers now. I have about 50 teachers. So between them, there's always somebody that wants to teach something that if someone else is maybe not able to teach anymore. So yeah, it's been amazing. I love having so many resources in my teachers. They're amazing. Actually, someone asks me a random question sometimes and I don't know. I'm like, "Oh, I know who's gonna know. I'm gonna just ask this teacher. They know the answer to this question." So it's almost like I have my own little group of experts, gathered together. So it's really fun. Yeah. So does that
Just
answer the
incredible.
question?
Yes, incredible. And so your now three locations are, they're far enough apart, right? Like a 30 to 45-minute drive, but you're still able, as kind of the director of the program, the founder, to visit and to kind of ensure that quality control is happening, and
Mhm.
to individually vet all of your teachers and so on. But you're starting to think about expanding out of state where it might not be so easy to have those frequent touch points. Tell us about what you're thinking in Arizona, going forward.
Yeah, I actually have some Zoom teachers who live in Arizona. Three of them live right near each other, and they actually, one of them introduced me to the other two. And so they are now saying, well, we really would love to do something in person. And, since we have already done this 3 times now, I would love to do that. So I did go and visit, and I feel like I need to make sure that they all three are on board to be one of them at least is on board to be a site manager that I can trust because I trust these three women, for sure. And basically that's what you need. You need somebody with your vision that understands your whole program and want to continue to duplicate that same um, feel and kind and tender, teaching. So I need somebody on the ground that can be my spokesperson for sort of, it's like they're the face of the company on the ground. So if they are not in line with what we want to do, then that will not work. So I'm working currently with those three teachers to pay maybe even in the fall, but I'm thinking it's more likely maybe in the spring to find a location for us to have the classes. Mostly at this point, the location is the thing that we're trying to figure out. Um, and also, since I do not live there, I feel like it is really important to have a community to start with. So we might do just a lot of community building activities this semester so that we will have a bigger pool of people. So that when we do start, we don't have just like two people or just the three teachers' children in the classes. We would love to have more because the whole point for them also is to get more friends and have more their kids ages to be to have fun with and learn with. So it would be better if there's a bigger group. And so they have a community organization already, but it's not quite large yet. So I feel like that might be the first step, but that's how I've built all the other ones. Like there's always a community before there's really a location. Um, so yeah, but I'm very excited about that because I do have all these visions of things that I would love to do there, um, and potentially in other places, but I can at least still drive to Arizona if I had to. It might take me 6 hours, but it's still a drivable distance, but I would probably fly if I had to go there. But, I would also visit and we would have the same process that we have here, but I wouldn't be able to go there as frequently. Currently, I go to every location multiple times a week, mostly because I just love to be there and hang out with everybody, and also just to check in on everything and make sure everything's going fine and discuss with the site managers who are basically the ones running the day-to-day operations, making sure that everybody's safe and making sure all the protocols are followed. So I wouldn't be able to do that so easily with Arizona. So I do that gives me pause, I think about it a lot. Like, is it really a good idea? I'm not living there and I don't really want to live there. I want to live near the beach. So it's yeah, it is definitely you need to have somebody that you really, really trust, and has proven themselves to really be um the thing is, like, the company is your baby, and you can't expect anybody to love the baby as much as you do, So if you're hiring anybody, they are feeling like it's their job, most likely. Hopefully, they're also loving it, but it's not quite the same as if it was theirs. So you have to really be sure that the person that's going to be there is going to be a steady presence too, because the kids and the parents and everybody start to get to know them and they feel like, okay, we can trust them. We want to, go talk to Miss whatever it is, they know the site managers very well. and they make it a point to get to know the kids. So it would be ideal if it's somebody that wants to be there for a while.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I love your advice around the community drives the location. It's sort of, where is the consumer demand, right? And sort of
Yes, yes.
following that demand and then thinking really carefully about that. And I think the story around growth is sort of similar to the overall story of entrepreneurship, is that the what separates entrepreneurs from everyone else is that willingness to tackle the unknown, to take on personal and financial risk and not always know if it's going to be successful. You kind of work through that fear and unpredictability and hope for the best. And so far, so
Mhm.
good for you. I know one other thing you said about the Arizona location is that the learners there would be able to attend using Arizona's universal school choice programs that enable
Yes.
all K to 12 students in the state to have access to education funding to use at micro schools and hybrid homeschool programs and other innovative models. Was that part of the kind of calculation as well in thinking about location?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's you can start something, but if it's not sustainable for people to keep coming, or if they only maybe have enough funding to sign up for one class, then you're gonna have a tiny, tiny location. And there is the whole scalability thing where it's like, if I already am having the expense for a small group, it's the same expense for a larger group and it's more sustainable. And it's really honestly like the ESA, we become vendors for all the states that we are learning about as they become as the ESA or other similar funds become available, we've become vendors for them because we do have students from other states taking our Zoom classes also. And we wanted to, like, we were just happy, like, okay, we're already vendors for the ESA in Arizona, so that would be a no-brainer in that sense. And so it will be able to, the people will just be able to use their ESA funds for the classes. So definitely that is a huge reason why Arizona seems like, well, that's a good one because they get even more funding from the state than California. And I would love eventually maybe to have a full-time school there that homeschoolers could be hybrid or part-time at, but just a school that because it's more affordable and also that the funding could potentially cover a whole year of school for families or close to it, that would be so amazing. I've absolutely hated, I always hate charging people for this because I feel like, man, if I just could get food in the house somewhere else for free, I would totally do these classes for free because I hate that anybody has to pay for it because it's like everybody should have the access to these kinds of classes. And but a lot of the time that's what keeps people from switching from public school because they are paying nothing, and then suddenly they have to pay something if they want to keep having kind of a full-time situation. So really the only people that are able to do it in California is people who already are either financially stable enough to pay extra or they're not necessarily needing to be there all the time. So the parents can do some stuff at home, to cut the costs. So yeah, no, definitely the ESA program was a huge reason. And um, yeah, other states, it's very exciting that there's so many states getting that. Oh, makes me
Yeah,
so happy.
it is such an exciting time in education. Clearly, your program is growing and flourishing, but I'd be curious, Elmarie, what you think about kind of the larger innovative education movement. Are you
Mm.
optimistic that momentum will continue to build for these types of creative schooling options?
Yeah, I mean, we live in America where there's, competition creates new businesses that are excellent. So it's like, this is so great. I've always said this is what needs to happen. The private companies like Columbia on the Book could be an example of how things could be done for the public schools, but then they can actually see people are starting to leave the schools to go to these other options. And as a result, they're going to have to do something to make it better. I mean, we wouldn't be doing any of this if it was a great system, but it's such a failing system. And so I could talk about that for a whole hour, but it's really sad to see kids coming. The kids that are coming to us, obviously, are all the casualties that the parents were willing and able to take them out of that system. But we see so many sad stories of bullying, not getting to the kid, like not being able to uh, either the kid is really advanced or is really behind, and the school isn't able to stop for them. Like there's not enough support, there's not enough adults around to keep the kids accountable to be behaving in a way that is kind to each other. So we have this survival of the fittest mentality of, being in school, almost Lord of the Flies sometimes. So it's really like very exciting to me to see that there's all these state programs that are, and it just makes no sense to me. I wrote an article last summer about how when you go to any hamburger place, any restaurant, you can customize your order however you want. I've gotten so used to it that sometimes I feel like I'm creating my whole different menu item, and they're just like, sure. And that's true for literally everything in our country except education. And it's like, what? That is like so foundational. So I'm very excited. I am a little nervous about potential regulations that they might bring. I know that the charter schools in California has always, since we've become vendors, they've been under attack sort of from the state. Like the public schools, the school districts in Santa Clarita, the school district has said they will not authorize any other charter schools, and there's only one here. And so that's just, like site-based charters. So they are very reluctant to take money away from the public school system, school district, even though they are still public schools. The money goes a different direction. And so it's very, they have tried to minimize, even during COVID. People wanted to switch because the school's value is the online Zoom was really terrible. And so they wanted to switch to a charter to just do homeschooling basically on their own. And the governor issued a decree that they capped the charter schools, and they could not accept any new students past whatever number they were at the time. So they've always been kind of under attack and trying to like more and more regulation, more and more regulation. So every year there's like, okay, what's going to be new this year? Because there's probably going to be something that's going to be more difficult than it used to be. It's still, compared to going to public school, it's still like, nothing, but it is still like more and more regulation. So I'm hopeful that that's not going to happen in some of these states, because right now there's a lot more freedom than what I'm used to seeing. And if they would just trust the parents, and they always point to the few little places where people abused somebody or that's terrible, but do they ever look at the public schools and wonder if anybody gets abused there? I hear the stories daily when people come to us of how their kid was abused by either other kids or just verbal abuse by the teachers, and they're not necessarily wanting to be there. They might have been a teacher for 50 years or 30 years or whatever and just be done with it, but they're still there. That's their job, and they're going to stick it out. And the kids pay the price, which is really sad. So, yeah, I'm very excited about it and a little bit like, oh, I hope we're going to be able to keep, like having the freedom that it seems like it has right now.
Yeah, and of your students, of the 500 total, which would include the
Mhm.
majority in-person programs and then the students you have online, would you say that what percentage would you say are joining your program and kind of coming into homeschooling or charter homeschooling because of something that happened in the conventional schools versus how many families are like you who chose homeschooling from the beginning?
Oh boy, that is such a good question. I have to look. Um, I would say at least half and half. I would say that it has changed a lot. It used to be in the very beginning, it was mostly just parents who wanted to homeschool. And then as time has gone on, it has been more and more people realizing how the public school is failing their child and then saying like, that's it, we're out of here. So usually the calls that I get are from people who have left public school for some reason or another. So I would say at least half, but I think it might be a little bit more on the side of people leaving because of the public school not serving them. Um, because then they usually end up at the charters because they feel kind of a little bit more like, okay, I have someone who can tell me what to do, because the parents also grew up in that system where you're told what to do. So it's scary for them to think they're in charge of their kids' education and they're not trained professionals, because we have that mentality of that only the trained professionals know what to do, which is not accurate. And, as you know, as a homeschooler, it's so not true. And so yeah, I would say at least half, but I think a little bit more on the side of the schools failing my child than just plain old homeschooling.
Hmm. Interesting. So, Elmarie, this has just been such a great conversation. If my listeners and viewers want to learn more about Learn Beyond the Book or connect with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's been so fun to talk to you. I could talk for hours. Yeah. So I have an email address that is very easy to remember. I have an official one too, but this is the easy one. It's just learnbeyondthebook@gmail.com. And that's the easiest way to get a hold of me. I check that email address constantly all throughout the day. And if you forget the email address, you could just go to the website, learnbeyondthebook.com, and click on contact us, and that comes to the same exact email address. So either way, you can contact us that way. There's also a phone number on the website. It's 661-347-6116. So if you have questions that you're like, I need some immediately speaking to somebody, um, I might not be able to get the phone right that second, but I'll call back. So yeah, I would love to answer any questions people might have, or just in general, like, homeschooling. I've started a homeschooling 101 course because someone actually asked me to do it for their group, and I'm going to be releasing those recordings because it's very it's so overwhelming to people. I feel like part of my job is just talking people off the ledge, like, it's okay, you could totally do it, we will help you. And then like a few months in, they're like, don't really need me. They don't say that, but they're like just happy as can be, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I did this. So
Oh,
yeah, it's
great.
definitely everybody can pull it off. But
Mhm.
thanks for having me, it was amazing. So
Well,
great.
best wishes on the
Thank
continued
you.
growth and success of Learn Beyond the Book. And Elmarie Hyman, thank you so much for being on the Liberated podcast.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks, Carrie, for having me. Enjoy your day.